trusted her.
That's cheating.
That's not.
Good afternoon. Today we're talking about the moment you realize they were never trying to understand you. There's a moment in certain conversations where you realize this was never about understanding. It was about anything but understanding. Maybe it was about diversion. Maybe it was about trying to avoid accountability. Maybe it was about trying to engage in conflict or essentially belittle you or make you feel like something was wrong with you. Hello, how are you doing today? Sumi, Trada Carey, welcome. And so you realize that it was just a tactic. Welcome. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. And so that can be really confusing, especially, hello. Good to hear it. So it can be a scenario where you go in expecting to have a conversation. I'm from the United States. You can actually have a conversation where you're expecting to have a conversation where you're actually going to resolve something or have an honest heart to heart. And then you realize, wait a minute, this isn't what we talked about. I feel like you're not wanting to actually talk about what we discussed. Excuse me, I think I'm going to sneeze here.Maybe not. And so you can almost feel like you are being almost bait and switched, or that they're coming with another agenda. Welcome. My name is Buffy. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for tuning in. So I don't know if many of you have, or any of you have had the issue where, welcome James Cameron, where you've had this scenario where you go in with a certain idea of what's going to occur, and it's actually anything but that. It's you're too sensitive. It didn't happen that way. Thank you very much. Kolkata, is that how you pronounce it? Welcome. And then you have this scenario where you're like, okay, wait a minute. This is a scenario where I'm being told that I'm too sensitive. Welcome, Sumitra. Is it Sumitra? Welcome. So you have a scenario where it's like, okay, well, you're too sensitive. That's not what happened. You're delusional, and then they start attacking you because they don't actually want to have the conversation. Very cool. And so ultimately what you see is you see the same old patterns that you've had with that person, where they're not willing to take accountability. They're not willing to actually talk about what occurred, but they want to talk about what you did. They want to project things on you. You didn't really come to the table wanting to actually have a conversation. And you literally are continuing to say that this is an issue. Hello. And so it's a scenario where they don't want to accept any blame, but they want to project blame onto you because they never had any inkling or any motivation to actually have a true, honest conversation other than shifting it to others, blaming others. Welcome, Ashu. Welcome, Belinda Guy. Hello, welcome. Today we're talking about the moment you realized they were never trying to understand you. So they went ahead and they accepted this invitation, accepted this meeting to have a conversation, but that was the last thing on their mind. They were ultimately hoping to stonewall you or divert you so that you would just drop it, right? They wanted to humor you, so to speak. And ultimately humoring you can mean, hey, you're too sensitive. Hey, you're, this is your fault. Like, why did you do this? I didn't do anything. I'm not responsible for this. No, I don't, unfortunately. And so that can be extremely difficult when you're a straightforward person who's looking to resolve something. But oftentimes I think people would rather keep the conflict than resolve what actually needs to be resolved, because resolving means apologizing. Sometimes resolving means actually talking about what your actual part in the misunderstanding actually is. And a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people want to say, I had nothing in this. This was you. This was something that you did. Anyone relate to that? Anyone have that issue where it's like you go to sit down and have a conversation with someone and they literally are wanting anything but the conversation? Or you notice that all of a sudden they're asking you pointed questions that literally have nothing to do with what actually occurred. So it's almost like they're trying to divert you from something. Well, didn't you do this? Like, you were the person that wanted this, so we did it for you, but now you're really not wanting to talk about this. And it's like, it's not that I'm not wanting to talk about this. It's that you are not in the right place to actually have an honest, open conversation. Because honestly, if you're not having an honest, open conversation with someone about something that affected you without name calling, without projection, without gaslighting, without any sort of manipulation, then you're really not having a conversation. You're having like a duel or a showdown of some kind. You're not actually addressing what got you to that place in the first place. And ultimately, they came under false pretenses. Maybe they thought that they would get you off your game and you would, say, okay, fine, we don't need to do this anymore. Like, this isn't important. You're right, I'm wrong. Excuse me. I feel like I was going to sneeze, but man, it's not letting me sneeze. Okay. And so you have the moment where it's like, wait a minute. Like, I thought we were coming to actually discuss the fact that we're disagreeing on this and we need to resolve it. Are you not wanting to resolve it? Are you not wanting to talk about like your part in it? Because I'm willing to talk about my part in it. I'm not saying that I'm 100% innocent, but what I'm saying is We need to figure this out. And if we can't figure this out, then why are we here? Because not only are you wasting your time, but you're wasting my time too, right? And that can kind of be kind of a rough way to say things, but you know, and then you realize when they start asking you questions, the questions really have no tie-in or no relevance to the initial problem that you guys are having. Why are you so sensitive? Like, why do you always do this? You need to drop this because you're being a baby. This needs to go. This needs to be done, right? And then ultimately, all you end up with is more confusion, less clarity, which is the whole purpose of this meeting in the first place. And then you're just so confused. You're like, what is going on? It's almost like we're in the twilight zone. What is going on? Someone help it make sense. How many times anyone say that ever? Help it make sense. And then on top of that, then you're dealing with the emotional exhaustion, right? Because it's like when you literally are hitting a brick wall over and over and over, it's like, oh, I have a headache, right? I have a headache. I don't know what's going on because they're not being clear. They're hiding the ball. It's like, this is frustrating. Like, why are we doing this? Right? It's like, why are we doing this? Anyone have that moment where you're like, man, I think I would get more relief from hitting my head against a brick wall than talking to this person because this person is not really doing the back and forth. They're stonewalling. They're using manipulative tactics. They're projecting. They're accusing me essentially of being a liar or being too sensitive or being delusional. I mean, that's not how you meet somebody to have a conversation and try to work things out. Because ultimately, you insult them, what's going to happen? They're probably going to get up and walk out. Or they're going to have some choice things to say to you as well, right? So that's kind of how that works. And then the emotional exhaustion, I mean, that can be something where you just like, man, I just need a few hours just to get through all this stuff. So today we're talking about the moment you realize they were never trying to understand you, that essentially they had other motives that weren't built on trying to come to a mutual understanding, to actually work things out and to get past differences. And generally that results from them not really coming to the table with clean hands, so to speak, which is a legal concept based on not having done wrongdoing. So you essentially come with pure motives. And so a lot of people generally will agree to certain things just to try to get you at the table and maybe have somebody who's going to kind of be a willing audience for them to be able to talk about what they feel that they need to talk about and what suits them, and essentially divert you and distract you and try to get you on another path so that they themselves don't feel like they've caused anything or that they're responsible for the breakdown in communication. And they can ultimately project on you how you clearly did not come prepared to fix the scenario, and how you are always being sensitive and overseeing things and overreacting. And it's a you problem more than a them problem because they reacted based on your behavior. I don't know. I think that's something that's really kind of sad about our culture in some ways now. It's a lot of like me, 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 me. It's a lot of, well, you did this and then you did this. And, and it's a lot of like projection. It's a lot of just like disrespect in a lot of ways. And it's also a lot of just people who aren't willing to take responsibility for what they did. And I think that is ultimately, if people want to have a good life, an honest life, and treat people the way that they need to be treated, you know what I mean? And stop projecting what you've done onto other people, because that is so immature. It's so like non-adult ultimately, because at some point you have to take accountability for your actions. And I think most people, I'm sure most of you are like, yeah, I take accountability for my actions. If I make a mistake, I'm going to apologize. If I misunderstand something, I'm going to apologize, right? clear the air. I'm not going to continue to run this same old circle over and over and over again. I mean, that gets exhausting to continually do the same thing over and over and over and over. And ultimately, the people that you're involved with, they know that you're the accountable party. Just say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and move on. But a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that, because then that would embarrass them and deflate their ego. But ultimately, I think it's important for us to coexist as people in general and treat people the way that we want to be treated, right? Whether it's a misunderstanding, that's fine. Misunderstandings can clear up. Conflict can clear up. But a lot of people are afraid of conflict. I don't like conflict myself, but I do try to resolve conflict in a calm and compassionate way when I can, rather than blaming people, rather than name calling, rather than being a nasty person to people just for the sake of being nasty and to get them to leave me alone. That's not the type of person that I am. I like people. I love people, actually. I like making friends. I like interacting with people. I like learning different viewpoints. I think that's important, and I think that a lot of people need to be much more people focused and treat people with kindness, but a lot of people just don't want to do that for whatever reason. And so the problem is, you and that person in this scenario are on two separate planes. You are wanting to resolve this. They're wanting to avoid accountability. So it's almost like you're doing this awkward dance. And the person who's trying to resolve it is giving their best effort. The person who is trying to avoid accountability is trying to blow up the other blow up the other person's strategy by being the antithesis of what they're trying to do. And that is clearly bad faith, which is also a contract term as well, because the person that agreed to the meeting knew what they were set to do, but chose not to for whatever reason. Likely vanity, likely, ego. All those things can definitely impact conversations and can definitely damage or tarnish a relationship, which is sad, because ultimately I'm sorry does a lot more than posturing and puffing up your chest and, playing a game of cat and mouse kind of thing. And it's unfortunate that people don't want to actually come to the table with clean hands and be thoughtful and be respectful. Instead, they would rather posture and play the game, which is a waste of everyone's time ultimately, right? I mean, they may think that they won because the person's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, whatever you want. I mean, maybe when the emotional exhaustion sets in, the other person's going to say, you know what, forget it. I don't know that I want to do this. This has been a lot. I don't know. I mean, we came here for a reason, and all we've done is the same song dance that we've been doing for a while now. I'm over it. You keep questioning me about things. You keep changing questions. You keep pushing me further and further and further and further, yet you refuse to answer anything. So I'm not really sure where we're going. Right? Welcome, Julian. Hi. And then all that happens is you're more confused than when you walked in the room, because you thought one thing was happening, and it's almost like a bait and switch, where, oh, have this rare coin, and then they switch it on you, right? And then the more you get confused, probably the more frustrated you're going to get as well, And then emotional exhaustion sets in, and you're like, I don't know. White flag, right? White flag. So feel free, if you guys have ever experienced this, to just say, yeah, me, or something. That would be fine. So ultimately, the person in our scenario was trying to resolve it, while the other person was trying to control it. And so ultimately, when you want to resolve something and then the other person wants to pull the strings, it can be extremely difficult to come to a meeting of the minds and to be able to actually work through what you need to work through. So the confusion that you feel in this scenario and that person likely feels is not accidental. It's a way to keep you confused, a way to keep you in the dark so that you're like, what is going on? What is going on? So I just want to say that if you're interested, like I said, I have 2 podcasts. Feel free to check those out on YouTube under recovering_perfectionist_mama. And I hope that you all got a little bit out of this conversation about tactics people use when they don't really want to admit accountability and when they want to kind of keep shifting goalposts, which happens quite frequently. So thank you all for tuning in, and I will be back tomorrow on YouTube Live at 12:30 again, and I'm getting ready to go on Instagram Live here around 1. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I appreciate each and every one of you, and please come back and see me again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.